Welcome to an episode of InRange. This is a second generation 1863 Maynard Civil War carbine, 50 caliber. This was a huge jump forward in terms of a gun on the battlefield for tactics and firepower because it's a breech loader. The original Maynard carbine came out in 1858, had a patch box in the rear, and it had the Maynard tape priming system right here in the receiver frame. Looked a lot like those little rolls of caps you'd have on a cap gun as a kid. So once you loaded with the Maynard priming system, you'd cock the hammer, progress one of those little pieces of cap forward or priming system, and then fire. The idea is you didn't have to fish for a musket cap out of your pouch to prime the gun. The Maynard priming system really didn't work that well in the field, and they sort of gave up on it, not only on Maynard's gun himself, but in the field in general. So when they went to the second model of the Maynard carbine, they omitted the priming system and got rid of the patch box just to increase manufacturing rate and reduce the cost of each individual weapon. Now, this is a breech loading gun, and it's an extremely simplistic breech loading gun. But just by the nature of being a breech loading gun that uses cartridges, it's a huge advantage on the Civil War battlefield compared to any muzzleloader of its time. Simply put, you literally open this action and the barrel pivots up. You put in your cartridge, which is a brass cartridge with a little pinprick hole in the rear, which is where the fire will come from the musket cap to ignite the cartridge, with of course has powder and ball. So you close this, cock the hammer, find a musket cap, place it on the nipple, aim, and fire. Yeah, fast reloads. Due to the fact that it's essentially a fixed barrel, this was really prized for its accuracy and used by sharpshooters on both sides of the war. The other thing that's interesting about the Maynard carbine is that it saw use not only by the Union, but the Confederacy. And part of that is the technology that made this gun really cool wasn't the really simplistic single break open barrel breech loading system, although that was an advantage at the time. It was the cartridges themselves. So if you had a Maynard carbine, you would make do with whatever you had on you. So this is my little pouch for my musket caps. This is where my primers are because there's no primer in the cartridges. But the cartridges themselves, I'm keeping in a standard Civil War cartridge box. This would have been used for paper cartridges or sharps or anything like that. And they're just loose, and then you can hear they're rattling. But this is a Maynard cartridge, and this is where the technology really shines. So obviously you see the projectiles, the bullet there on the front. It is a brass cartridge. It is extremely thick-walled, meaning it doesn't really deform in firing, and it has a little pinhole in the rear, which allows the priming system, or the musket cap, to ignite the cartridge. Since these cartridges are so rigid and so well built that you would want to pick them up and collect them, because what you could do is, when you weren't in battle, you could reload these back at camp and then have your breech loader ready to go for the next day with the cartridges you fired the day before. I'm going to demonstrate for you here how you would do that. So I've got my little haversack here and all the tools I need to reload my cartridges. I've got a hammer, but you could use a rock or something to make sure that the firing, the little pinhole in the rear of the cartridge isn't blocked by anything. I've got some fired Maynard cartridges here, 3 of them. You can see they've been fired. I've got a powder measure to measure the powder charge, and I've got some bullets that were cast, earlier around the camp last night. So simply put, you would take your cartridge, make sure that there's nothing blocking the hole, because otherwise it wouldn't fire. Set that on the table. Take your flask, measure your powder charge, fill it, tap it so that it's level. Take one of your bullets that you cast previously, seat it, and literally just whack it. Boom, that's it. This is a reloaded, ready to go Maynard cartridge. Let's do one more. And again, you could do this in the field regardless of supply line. If you had lead and a mold, you could cast bullets. And if you had powder, of course you could fire. You would need that regardless. And if you had musket caps, well, then you could fire as well. Things that you would find with any other really weapon in the field at the time. So take another one of my cast bullets, seat it, just give it a couple whacks, and boom, there it goes. I now have two ready to go Maynard cartridges for combat, battle, whatever, tomorrow. Something that was a huge advantage, particularly with the Maynard and a couple other Civil War carbines, but the Maynard was best known for this. One other thing I want to mention is there's nothing new under the sun. This is a single point sling used during the Civil War with a saddle ring on it. Very common at the time, and that was existed even before the Civil War. In fact, you see examples of that all the way back to the Rev War and beyond. One other thing I want to talk about when I said the technology of this gun, the shines, is the cartridge. So a lot of the breech loaders of the time didn't have a good gas seal. In fact, this gun, many of the guns would fire and they would leak gas, not only from here, but around there, and could be even dangerous to the shooter. The Maynard, however, by the way it seats into the breech, and you see that very large cartridge case head, when you close it, it actually seals quite well. And the gas leak on the Maynard carbine is minimal, if not none, compared to many other Civil War carbines at the time. So in this regard, the Maynard really is one of the best breech loading carbines of the Civil War. So on the quote long range stage, I shot everything offhand because with your accessories and gear on this stage, it's actually easier to reload from standing than it is from prone or any other position. And so you'll notice something interesting in the long range is that when you're shooting a modern gun, you shoot from position A, you get your hits, and then you move to position B as fast as possible, and then quickly acquire and hit the targets from position B, C, etc. But with this, in which there is literally a reloading time involved, it was much better to just have the gun ready once I got to the position I was going to fire from. You'll actually see that reflected in doctrine from the day even. So I would shoot, get the hit, and then you'll notice, walk, while loading, to the next position, literally advancing versus assaulting, perhaps would be the, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but makes sense when I use it here. This gun is very accurate. If you have the sights on the target, you're gonna hit it. Now, one of the challenges about this though, are the sights are pretty hard to use because it's a crowded sight picture. When the hammer is cocked, you will notice that there's not a lot of room to actually see the sights. And so you have to sometimes get on it to really get to it. But it is a very crowded sight picture. But once the sights are on the target, this gun does the job. Now, part of that is the quality of the barrel manufacturing that apparently was part of the deal with the Maynard carbines. But of course, it's also just a tip-up barrel. There's not a lot of things to go wrong there, right? So on that long-range stage, hits are easy to acquire. I could not reload fast enough to spin the spinner. There's just too much time fumbling with those musket caps to get them on the percussion, on the nipple. It just wasn't possible. Yes. All right. Yeah, probably not possible. Yeah, but I just can't. Oh jeez, reload fast enough.
3 hits?
Yeah, I got 3 hits on it. Yeah. In summary, I do have a whole bunch of Civil War carbines that I'm going to be using on the channel over a slow duration of time. I know some of you have been waiting quite a long time, I think well over a year. And this is one of the first ones I finally got out here on the clock. That said, I think I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler. With the exception of the sight picture being crowded, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm pretty confident that the 1863 Maynard carbine is the best breech loading carbine of the Civil War period. Single shot breech loader. People are going to say, what about the Spencer? But the Spencer is, of course, a repeater. And the Sharps with paper cartridges is okay, but it has ignition issues, which, by the way, you saw one ignition issue at this match. This is a lightweight, handy carbine with a 350 grain bullet moving at about 1,000 feet per second, capable of hitting at range. There are reports of people hitting quite to distance with this, including up to 500 yards. And I can see it. The gun's accurate enough. The sights are actually good enough to do it. And this thing being capable of being used in the field and reloading your own cartridges in the field, along with it being very lightweight, hanging on a sling or in a horse scabbard, the Maynard Carbine was a winner, and it was a precursor of what was to come. Of course, the big advantage that moved on next was when you started putting the primer or rimfire into the cartridge. This is the big deficiency with the Maynard, is that it still is dependent on the musket cap priming system. Guys, I hope you enjoy this kind of content. If you do, you're not going to really find it anywhere else, at least that I'm aware of, because this is the kind of stuff that doesn't get the mega views. This is the stuff that's really for the real enthusiast, the guy that cares about firearms and firearms history. And InRange is proactively demonetized. No monetary support from any sponsors, no corporations, no overlords, nothing from YouTube, not even YouTube Red. Everything you saw today, the carbine, the ammunition, the powder, the ball, the cartridges, all was because of Patreon supporters, viewers like you. You can find that at patreon.com/InRangeTV. If you're already one of them, thank you so much for keeping InRange alive. If you'd like to consider it, we'd love to have you. And if you can't, totally understand. The other thing you can do is help me defeat the algorithm by being an organic algorithm. Share this video with your friends. If you think that there's someone out there that's into the Civil War or into firearms history, share this video with them and do it for me, because the algorithm won't. Thanks for watching.